Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good evening. I'm still admitting people.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome. I do apologize. We are having some kind of an issue with Zoom. So I had to shut it down and trying again. Let's see if we can get this done. Dom, I see you on the line. Good evening.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome, welcome. Now, a few seconds ago, I had all of the hosts together and none of you. And now I have all of you and none of our trainers. So just hold 1 second. We've got to figure this out. All right. Just give me a second. There has to be another way to do this.
Satellite, you can see that the clouds that we have around for today, it's going to stay pretty clear through the evening. As you can see, it's clear, but parts of the state and some places perhaps even icy bit, so I want to be aware of that. And maybe some clouds on half of that, but another parts of the state. See a change from all week.
I'm just sending an email to all of our guests to see if I can somehow get them on the same page here. If you just give me 1 second, please. All right, I just sent them a new link. I'm hoping that works. Not sure what's happening. Anybody on this line who is a Zoom expert? You folks I'm still admitting people. Hold on.
I don't know. Can you even hear me? My name is Connie.
Hi, I can hear you. Good evening.
Oh, good. Hi.
Hey.
Are you, what's your name? Sharice?
Anne Marie. I'm Anne
Oh,
Marie.
Anne Marie.
Yeah,
Hi, Marie.
nice to meet you all. And good evening.
I'm not a Zoom expert, but I can see 20 participants down below.
Hey, Marie, Julio's trying to get back in.
Okay, Julio's trying to get back in. Let me just see if I can. Okay, Frank, I see you're here.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm on.
Let me see if there are anybody else. Oh, here he is. He's in the waiting room. And
He's in the,
yeah, beautiful. Diana, is Diana on the line?
All right, now I'm in.
yeah.
Yes, I'm here. I'm on the line.
Okay, beautiful. Oh, my
Thank
goodness.
you,
Okay,
Marie.
Now we are ready to go. I hope. All right. Good
All
evening.
right, there's Julio.
There's Julio. Okay, here's coming in a few more. I do apologize, folks. Good evening. My name's Anne Marie from the Black Business Alliance. Welcome to this PPP training that we are pleased to offer you in partnership with the Southern Connecticut Black Chamber of Commerce. Diane, would you like to say hello, say a few words, and I'll get the PowerPoint set up. Is she on?
She was a minute ago.
And can you, Frank, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh,
And
great.
Marie is trying to
Okay.
get the PowerPoint up.
Okay.
Yep, you've got good sound and everything. Beautiful. Okay, here's Diana. She's coming on now.
Okay, wonderful.
And so thank you. I appreciate you all coming, being here on time. We intend to end on time. This is our session for first-time applicants for the PPP program. And we decided to break this down into a smaller portion where we could walk you step by step through the application, answer any questions you have. We will take our time this evening. Diana, are you on the line? Can you hear us? I'll come back to it. Diana is the co-host from the Southern Connecticut Black Chamber of Commerce, and we're thrilled to have all of you on the line this evening. I'm going to turn this over immediately to our guests, Julio Cassiano and Frank Alvarado from the Small Business Administration, and let them get going. Just tell me when you want me to put up the presentation, Mr. Cassiano.
Oh, I'm ready. Whenever you say to go, I'll be ready.
All right, I'm sharing my screen. There are a few more coming in. I'm going to ask everybody if they could please put themselves on mute, and we will have a portion of question and answer. If you have any questions, you could go ahead and put those in the chat in the meantime, and we'll be able to answer those questions as we go along, but we will have a question and answer period as well. All right, can you see?
We can just hit the slideshow.
Good.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening, folks. And again, thank you for inviting the Small Business Administration, especially the district office here in Connecticut. And our staff really is here to work with you. And we're a dedicated staff in terms of trying to do as much as we can to make sure the word gets out on these programs. These programs do have a date that they do lapse. And so we need to make sure that that information gets out to you as quickly as possible. And so what we're going to do is we're going to immediately get into some of the discussion. Hopefully there'll be a Q&A session where I'll try to answer as many questions as possible. But in the interim, let's start talking about this program. And this is not a new program. This is fairly a program that's been around since April, depending on which program we're looking at. And it's a continuation under legislative acts that have been extended since as far back as April. And the last one really occurred just this past, well, I thought last month, but now we're in February. Back on December 27. And most of this information is as current as can be. I've added additional slides to try to show you exactly what are these forms and how do you use the forms in order to complete whatever portion of the application process you're interested in. So the next slide talks about the different things we're going to be talking about today. Next slide. There we go. So we're going to be talking about the various dates that impacted this program. What is the first draw? What is the second draw? And the forgiveness updates for those that already have borrowed and intend to borrow. And then what to do now, additional resources, things like that. We're all going to cover this in the next hour. Next slide. So basically, as I said earlier, this program is an extension of programs that have been issued under the CARES Act as far back as really March, when the disaster was declared here by the governor and on a national basis by the president and Congress. And so these funds have been allocated specifically to help small business. However, they did have sunset dates, and some programs continued, others lapsed. And as of December 27th, we're going to be talking about what programs are still available since December 27th, which leads us to today. Next slide. These are the important dates that have impacted most of us. January really kicked off the program. Most of the early dates of January 11th, 13th, and 15th are behind us, as well as the 19th. And those are the dates that launched the program really to the smallest of the smallest businesses, that we were trying to make sure that under the new legislative act, the smallest businesses were at the table first. What had happened in the earlier launches, some of the larger, basically the larger borrowers got ahead, and they already were set up and immediately went to the lenders and were able to borrow, where some of the smaller businesses did not know exactly how to borrow or that the programs even existed. So this time around, Congress wanted to make sure that the information on these programs got out to the smallest of the small, and that these early dates from January 11th, 13th, and the 15th really were put in there to help some of the smaller businesses go to local lenders, community CDFIs, or community banks around the 1 billion in size. By January 19, the program was opened up to all lenders in the United States, meaning these are usually your traditional FDIC insured lenders, savings institutions, credit unions, and what we call our fintechs. These are like PayPal that have access to also using the program to lend. Next slide.
And just a piece of information that as of last week, Connecticut has banks and lenders have lent out over $1 billion already.
Wow.
Right. A lot of the banks here in Connecticut really got committed in doing this. One of the worries we had early in the process was will there be interest in the banks? Because the way to get this money out was through the Federal Reserve. There is no way of getting, we're talking hundreds of thousands of small businesses around the country, 50 states. Then you have territories like Puerto Rico and Samoa and the Virgin Islands. And the only way you could do this, there's no way, through SBA Treasury. This was really handled amazingly by the banks. And so most of the banks in the state of Connecticut are now back into the fray. And that's where Frank indicated that just between the 11th, when the program was launched, up to today, last week, over $1 billion in PPP loans already have been approved by the banks. So tremendous effort by those banks that are trying to do this program from such a quick pace, which in the original launch back in April, it took a while for the lenders to catch up. This time the lenders were prepared. So hopefully, as you go to the banks or to the lenders of your choice, whether it's credit union, savings bank, they're already ready to take your application. So who's eligible under this thing called the first draw? Let me just explain this between first draw and second draw. What the first draw really is that Congress, in their good graces, when the original program was launched, that was technically the first draw. So if Julio's Bakery, as I had indicated in previous webinars, never knew that this program existed up to whatever, this month, last month, or whatever it was, I would not have access to either the first draw or the second draw, because the second draw didn't even exist. The first draw technically ended back on August 8th. And so between August 8th and then the mentioning of the 9th, which really is the next day, the program was no longer available. So any small business that wanted money through the federal act known as the CARES Act, up through August 8th, had this ability to go to a bank and borrow under this thing called the Paycheck Protection Program, or better known as PPP. What happened is then after August 8th, the program lapsed. No more money. You couldn't go to the banks. You couldn't call me. I had no magic wand of trying to get you money. We had to wait. It was a legislative act, and it really went through all the way from September up through the end of December, when the Congress, Senate, and President signed off on the new act on December 27th. That opened up then the program. However, what they did was smart as can be. They said, well, there were a lot of people that did not borrow under the original program. So guess what? We'll open it for those that did not borrow under the original program. And that is called now the first draw. So again, if Julio's Bakery did not know this program ever existed, and you called me, or you called Anne Marie over at the BBA or the chamber, they're going to tell you you're a new business, you never applied before. You're going to have to then go through the original program, which is now called the first draw. And under that program, basically, you would be able to borrow under the original conditions that were in the program. There have been a few things that were expanded. Other businesses can now go into the program. But in general, the original program, you could go up to $10 million. And if you had up to 500 employees. So under those rules, you can actually go back into the original program. And if you think you have that type of need where you demonstrate the employee level and the cash flow that you need to support that payroll, then the program can make you whole for up to 10, you're looking at 10 weeks in the original program, which is roughly about 2.5 months of payroll. This is a payroll program. Understand that from the beginning. It's not to be used for me to take money and buy and repair my trucks, or go and use that money to expand my business. The first three letters, payroll protection programs, to protect your payroll, is to keep your employees in place, is to rehire them, or to continue paying them using the taxpayer money for 10 weeks, which is amazing, to continue to pay my employees while I'm retaining the cash in my business, really helping me to improve my cash flow, because I'm now using taxpayer money, federal program money, to give me access for 10 weeks of pay. And so what you would do then, if you wanted to do that, is then you would borrow under this thing called the Payroll Protection Program. The program, excuse me, basically allows you what they call the cover period between 8 to 24 weeks. So you have to use the money within that 8 to 24 week period. Now you can't say, okay, in the third week I used it, let me apply for the second draw of money. You have to physically wait for the whole first 8 weeks before you could immediately launch into the second draw, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the intention of the program is to help you with your cash flow and payroll during the first draw. So you would then apply under that. The program, whether it is the first or the second draw, we're going to talk about the second draw in a few minutes, has a lapse date of March 31st. The only way that date can change is through a congressional act, meaning legislatively through Congress, the president, and the Senate. So again, there's a lot of discussions in the Senate and presidency right now. Things could change, but that's out of my control. But effectively, the current legislation on this program is as of December 27, which says that the program will lapse officially March 31st, 2021. Which means I have between February and next month to get my application in. Next slide.
I'm sorry, you have covered eligible expenses are expanded. Are there more expenses that will be covered? Will
Yes.
Will you
Yes,
cover
well,
that area?
Yep.
Okay,
We're going to cover that.
Thank you.
Yep. Next slide.
Okay, my screen seems to be frozen, so let me just try to.
Eligible covered expenses, while Ann tries to work on the slides. Basically, when the program was launched back in April, you had to use 75% of that money for payroll and only 25%. That was changed under legislation after July, which then allowed the business to then use 60% of payroll and 40% for other costs. And hopefully we'll talk about that in a minute. But the expanded program allows other types of businesses or entities to apply. These entities that say newly eligible could not, under the original program, apply. So if you were a housing cooperative, you couldn't apply. Now you can. If you're a destination marketing organization, these are usually travel and tourism organizations that are linked into a city, they can apply. Because most tourism operations basically almost went out of business or shut down because people weren't traveling or going to the destination that they wanted to go to. So now they can apply. Certain 501c6s, these are organizations such as chambers of commerce, can now apply. So a chamber of commerce, usually what happened was a 501c6s had a distinct thing that they could lobby. And under the original program, if you were a lobbying organization, you couldn't apply for the program. Congress expanded it to allow 501c6s to apply, providing that they stipulate that only a minimal portion of their grants or income that comes in is derived from lobbying. Also, the other thing that was added into this program are news and media. They were not covered in the original program. So if you're in a news media outlet or a television station, things of that nature, you can now be eligible. So you can now apply under the first draw and second draw for assistance. Still, the program, the basic tenet in this program was for small businesses, and those are there. These are partnerships, corporations, LLCs, S corporations, sole proprietors, independent contractors. These are your 1099. So if I'm a healthcare provider and I'm doing work and I'm getting paid on a 1099 from a health institute or whatever it is, I'm self-employed, I can apply for this program. Also self-employed individuals, these are your Schedule C. So if I file a tax return and I have a DBA, you know, Julio's Bakery, no employees, just myself, me, myself, and it, and I file a Schedule C, revenue, expenses in my little bakery shop and profit in the bottom, I just provide the bank with the Schedule C, and they will work with me to provide me with the money under those rules. Also, your traditional 501c3. These are a lot of your non-for-profits in general, community organizations. They qualify under the program. Frank's Love Fest with the veteran organizations, the 501c19s, they're included, and tribal organizations can also apply under the program. So there's a big, you know, opening bat of businesses that can actually go in to apply under the first draw, and which means also the second draw too. Next slide. Frank, is not my presentation.
It's not coming up, Emery. There we go. There we
Is
go.
it good? Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up now.
All right.
Okay, we're there.
Okay. Now this is the new part of the program where this was not part of the original legislation. This was enacted as part of the new money that was provided under law to continue to feed, not feed, but to provide capital to small businesses. So not only were these businesses allotted money in the first tranche, or what they call the first draw, now you could come back and apply for secondary money under the second draw. Technically, if nothing changed, you would probably be getting the same money you got in the first draw as in the second draw. So if I still have the same amount of employees, very little change in expenses for payroll, and I got $10,000 in draw one, chances would be you probably wind up with the $10,000 in the draw two. So the only difference is that in order to limit the businesses that could go into this program so that the smallest of the small really have access to this capital program, is that the employee base has to be now 300. The original program is 500 employees, and that's a lot of employees, which you generally, if you have 500 employees, you probably could max out at $10 million. Now the program stipulates that the maximum number of employees you could have is 300 employees, with the caveat you have to demonstrate that your business has suffered a 25% in revenue reduction or gross revenues over 1 year comparison. So there are two options you could do. Most small businesses don't have a bookkeeper, don't have an accountant that's there monthly giving you reports. But if you do, that might be your second option. But in general, small businesses, what they have is that I see the accountant on January, the whole next 12 months, I don't see him. I don't need him. I'm not going to pay him. I don't have that cash. But I see him at the end of the year. I see her at the end of the year, and she gives me, or he gives me, the tax return. That's where the Schedule C is. That's where the partnerships returns are. That's where the corporate tax returns are on. But and under this program, you have to prove 25% reduction, which means I have to pull out my 2019 tax return, and I have to then look at my 2020 tax return, do a comparison, do a calculation, And if I had $100,000 in 2019 and I have $75,000 in 2020, when I do the math, I've lost 25%. I can apply for the second draw. And most businesses, just by being shuttered, most of your small businesses were closed down for 2 months, 3 months. Chances are you automatically, just by doing the calculation, would know right away you've suffered 25, 50, 75% of revenue. So you would qualify, but there are those businesses that did well during COVID. They didn't suffer. Well, those businesses might not be able to demonstrate a 25% reduction. The other way that you can prove the 25% reduction between year over year is to provide then a quarter financial statement versus another quarter, same quarter. So if I wanted to do a comparison quarter to quarter, and my worst quarter, if you think about it, is going to be March, April, and May, because that was when the state of Connecticut was practically shut down. I'm going to go to the same quarter, which would be you have to use a quarter. You can't use a fiscal, come up with a different month. You're going to have to do January through so it's January, February, March. That's one quarter. The other quarter would be April, May, June, July, August, September, and then you would have your fourth quarter of October, November, December. So you would have to choose, probably you can choose the quarter that starts in January and compare, that quarter that ends in March. If you think that was your worst quarter, and you compare the 2019 quarter versus the 2020, and if the numbers are 25% in reduction, you can then apply for the second draw. Now, the limits in the second draw is $2 million. Unlike in the first draw, it's 10 million. The second draw, the maximum is 2 million. There's another benefit that is applied by legislative act, is that unlike in the first draw, the maximum, the multiplier that you're going to get in terms of dollars is 2.5 times. And I'll explain that in a minute. If you had a business, right, and I had employees, and my revenue, I'm going to keep it simple. My payroll for the year is $12,000. That's my total payroll. I looked at my QuickBooks. I looked at my tax return, and it shows $12,000. I would take that $12,000 and divide it by 12. That gives me my monthly payroll, which is $1,000. I then multiply it by the approved multiplier that the government is allowing me to multiply my monthly payroll by 2.5 times. So knowing that my monthly payroll is 1,000, I multiply by 2.5 times, it gives me 2,500. That's the amount of money the lender, the credit union, wherever you're going to go, the fintech, the CDFI will then give you that 2.5 times, which is $2,500. That's what's going to be provided to you, which technically, for a business that has a $12,000 payroll, that represents 2.5 months of payroll. Not bad. Taxpayers are going to be paying that for you. Now, here's the interesting thing under the second draw that is not in the first draw. They're allowing, Congress did the studies, and there was a lot of companies and businesses saying that they were really, really hurt because of the shutdowns by the state or the federal government or whatever, municipalities. If you're a restaurant or a hotel, what they call accommodation facility, and in your tax return, in the corner on the top, you normally put this thing called the NAIC code. That's basically an industry code that the IRS or Treasury uses to determine industry, not you. They don't know, who you are, but they know how many businesses are in the restaurant business by this code. So when they do a statistical, they say, okay, 5 million people applied. They all got 72. And that code number on the top of their tax return, they know that there are 5 million restaurants around the whole country. That's really what they use that for statistics. Well, that number that you have, if you have that number, that NAICS code, that will allow you to use a multiplier of 3.5 times, not 2.5 times. So if I'm Julio's Bakery, and by the way, I'm also a restaurant and I have the 72 code in there, I then take the $12,000 divided by 12, which is 1,000, multiplied now by 3.5 times, gives me $3,500 in cash. That's how much money the bank is, and it's a simple formula. That's what the bank is going to use. They're not creative about this. The formula is there, it's fixed. They're going to take your payroll, multiply it by 2.5 times if you're not a restaurant or an accommodation industry, 72 code number. But if you are a 72 code number, you will then be given the multiplier of 3.5 times, which means you're going to get more cash flow to cover payroll, which is representing about 3.5 months versus the regular retailers that are going to get 2.5 month coverage. So that's a very important piece of legislation that came out. And now the thing is, this is only applicable under the second draw. So if you're going to the first draw, it doesn't apply. However, the minute you go into the second draw, if you already had the first and you're a restaurant, when you apply for the second, you're going to be given the 3.5 times. Next
Julio,
slide. Yes.
Did you talk about the percentage of payroll for the first draw people? Did I miss that?
Yeah, what it is that when you submit your payroll, the bank is going to, or your lender is going to look at your payroll as being the amount of money that they're going to provide you. So if you have a $75,000 payroll, now what's interesting is that if you have health insurance, there are a lot of other, anything that the employer pays on behalf of the employee to cover medical, health, 401k, anything like that can be included in the wages of the numbers. So all of a sudden, Julio's Bakery only shows $12,000 in wages, but I got health insurance that I'm paying.
Okay.
And all of a sudden it goes up to 15,000. Then it's the 15,000 I'm going to be applying for.
Okay.
So
it's really dollar for dollar of all the payroll costs. For
Right.
the first draw people. Okay.
Correct.
I know this is maybe off a little, but we're a funeral business, and payroll has been trying to be kept at a minimum, but the expenses are tremendous.
Right.
They've been tremendous in 2020. So this is where we're running into a huge deficit.
Right.
Any help there, or should we take this off?
Yeah. No, I was going to get into the other programs in a minute.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry.
if you want to wait,
Yes.
I could answer that question. So hopefully I'll get
Okay.
your answer amongst the other programs that we have available to you. So yeah, just bear with me another couple of minutes and you'll see the slide.
Thank you. And if I could also just jump in for a second, some folks have joined us a little later. So I just wanted to reiterate again, this is focusing on first-time applicants for PPP. So Julio's been kind enough to just kind of sort through first and second draw, but we're really going to spend the rest of this time focusing for first-time applicants so that you understand all of the details and the process. And then we will have a period of answering questions and answers. We will open up the mics and allow you to ask your questions. And folks are putting the questions in the chat, so I'll be able to bring those up at the end as well. All right, if folks can just mute your mics for us as well, that would be helpful. Julio, can you do me a favor and put your presentation up on your computer just to be on the safe side?
Give me 1 second.
But I'm gonna put your next slide up anyway.
You're gonna have to give me control.
Yep, I will do that for you.
The one that's on the screen, is that, let me see if it's mine. Give me.
That's mine. It's your next slide.
Oh, okay. So you're in control?
For
Okay,
now.
all right.
But I gave you
Yep.
control and then we can switch.
Oh, okay. All right. So move to, now I'm on, let me just make sure I know on what side. I'm lost on my slides over here.
You were on forgiveness?
Forgiveness update, Julio.
Right.
Do you want to share it? You want me to stop sharing?
No, it's fine. I just need to know which
Okay.
slide I'm on. Forgiveness. Okay, with the forgiveness, and again, this is for first-time drawers now. We're going to be talking on first-time drawers, those that have the existing PPP. When this program was launched, technically is a grant. You know, the way Congress initiated this program is for grant. It's for you to provide information once you use the money so that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, will make the bank whole for whatever the dollars that you borrowed, whether it's 20,000, 100,000, 300,000, provided that you provide the same documentation showing how you used the money when you took the money out. So keep it simple, kind of that rule, keep it simple, stupid. If I borrowed and I gave them these forms and these forms said I have X, Y, and Z, at the end of the what they call the covered period, which is either 8 or 24 weeks, you would then submit the backup documentation that proves that you used the money accordingly. That's what the forgiveness process is. The forgiveness process really begins once you use the money according to the way you needed the money to be used. So if I used the money and I was going to use it in 8 weeks in payroll, then once that 8-week period ended, I could then begin the process of submitting to the lender the forgiveness application. And we're going to go over the sample because there have been a lot of updates and modifications on the forgiveness application. If you asked me back in June, it was about 10 pages. It was War and Peace, and you would have had to have gone to a CPA to help you to put this together. A lot of the small businesses were saying, wait a minute, I thought this was a grant program. So at the end, what happened was that Congress, in their good graces, immediately passed into law under the legislation in December 27, a new form which any amount under $150,000 would have a streamlined forgiveness application, which is really a one-pager subject to some documentation you need to submit and get that into the bank. That basically is the streamlined process with the form. That form is the 3508S, which you see it in the bottom, and that's up to $150,000. One of the things that was in the old legislation was that there was not enough language in there that would have protected you from this thing called the EIDL advance. If you had an EIDL advance, meaning through the SBA, when you apply for the economic injury disaster loan, you were entitled up to a $10,000 loan, which was a grant, as long as you didn't have anything under the PPP program. So if you just went to the SBA website and went through our disaster program, you could have had a grant up to $10,000. The way the program was structured was that per employee, you would have gotten $1,000. So if you had 10 employees, you would have been given a grant for $10,000. However, the language did not protect you as a grant if you borrowed under the PPP. If you borrowed under the PPP, that $10,000 would have been transferred over to the PPP loan, and it would have become a loan under there. Congress, seeing that that was causing a lot of strife for the small businesses, passed on strong legislation that disallowed that. So if you have an EIDL advance that you took out for $3,000 under the new legislation, you do not have to pay that back. The banks have been informed of that. And so if you've been notified on that, just give your lender a call and just let them, they'll tell you what's been happening. But if you did have an advance, then just be aware that you no longer owe that money. Next slide.
I'm gonna let you share if you can.
Okay. Let me try to get it into the share mode. Okay, let me put it up on my slides.
Hit that slideshow, click.
Okay. This is, if you could see what's on the screen, this is the application for the first draw.
Julia,
It's
can you hit
number-
the slideshow? Can you hit the slideshow button?
I
on
did,
your end?
yeah, do you see it on your side?
It's not coming up as a slideshow. It's coming up as a,
Right, because I see it on my end on the screen.
okay.
Julio, go back and hit current from current slide. See if that will do it. Go to slideshow and then hit current slide. See if that will do it for
Okay.
you.
For some reason, hold on, let me just close.
PowerPoint problems.
I see the screen moving on my end on the presentation, but you don't see it on your end?
We see it, but it's in the PowerPoint view mode. So we're seeing all of your other slides on the side.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to open it up to the full
You can't hit
slideshow.
You can't hit the
Yeah.
slideshow button?
I am, and it won't,
Hmm.
it won't let me. I don't
Okay.
know why. It just stays at the format that is in right now.
Mm.
That's odd, because this is the first time I should see the whole full screen.
I can go back to sharing.
Okay, yeah.
I'll have to just jump in and out. So if you stop sharing for 1 second and then.
Hello, I just want to say, if you go down the bottom where the volume key is at the bottom of your screen, there's a little symbol, right? The first one right next to your plus minus on the volume. If you try clicking that, that should work. Go all the way down. You know where your the PowerPoint, the volume. I just saw it. Well, can you see it? There's a little symbol right next to the volume, right next to the minus, the first one. Do you see your volume
Inside?
on the right side? Do you see your volume at the corner?
Lower right corner.
At the very bottom.
No, not on my, well.
I saw it before. I don't know what happened.
On the bottom, we can see it. It's on the bottom where the line, it says notes. That's where you're saying where it says notes, display setting, and then those other icons.
Yeah, the icon, the one right next to the volume. Right next to the volume, if you can see
It looks like a little tree.
Exactly. The
Box,
first.
if you click on that one, that's the presenter view.
Yeah, try clicking that one.
But it's interesting. You see it at your end, but I don't see it on my end.
I saw it before. I saw it before, and it's missing now. But it was there, a minute ago, before you did something else.
Well, so we don't hold things up. If you want, Julio, if you stop sharing, I can share mine because at least they can see the whole screen. I just have to go back and forth between windows.
Okay.
So you stop sharing for a second, and then I'll get the other slide.
I'll hit stop share, so you have control.
Awesome. All right, let's see if we can do it this way. All right, I am coming right there. All right, now I'll screen share. I can show you the whole thing. Let's see if we can do it this way.
There we go. Okay. Okay.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep,
it's
you're good right
moving.
there.
It's moving. Go ahead.
Yeah, there should be one that says, if you could go back a few slides, there's a form. Keep going. Yep, there it is. This is the first, this is the form for those that have never borrowed. And believe me, I've talked to folks out there. they were not aware, or they just didn't really have interest, or they just did not have the proper advice or connections with a lender. For whatever reason, you do have an opportunity now to apply and get money under the first draw. This is the application, and if you could see, it's not that difficult. You could reach out to the partners here. You could reach out to the SBA. We have other partners that could help you with this process, and it's all for free. So don't fear that you're not going to be supported by anyone. Just give us a call, call the BBA, call the chamber, or call SBA, and we'll be more than happy to work with you on getting someone that will help you with filling the application. But the application, all it just requires is your information, type of business. You're going to be filling in information about the year your company was established, the legal name, and the NAIC code. Whatever that code number is, you're going to get that from your tax return, or you could call your accountant. Hopefully they could help you get the number. That's going to go in there. That number really becomes critical if you're a restaurant, or you're in the accommodation, or in that type of industry. That's where the number is going to become critical for you to put in, because that's what's going to drive the lender to do the 3.5 times versus the 2.5 times. Understand that in the
if I can interject, but for the first time draw,
right, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, only the 2.5 applies.
Right, I was going to mention that. Thank you, Frank. That the 2.5 times stands under the original application, because those folks that are borrowed in the original app, the original funding, did not have the ability to do the 3.5 times computation. So all you're going to be putting in the middle of this application, if you notice, the average monthly payroll. So again, Julio's Bakery, I would have plugged in there the 12,000. If I had paid health insurance and other employer related expenses for payroll, I would put in, so if it's $15,000, that's what I would plug in on that average monthly box. You notice the next gray area says times 2.5 times. Whatever that amount goes in there, that would be the amount of money that I would be getting from the lender. There is some additional question in there. If you had an idle loan, you would include in there. And those are idle loans that were issued back in January, between January and April 3rd. Most people that I worked with back in January and even through March, the economic injury disaster loan really was just getting up and running. Very few people really had the opportunity to even apply for the idle loan back in that time. But if you did, and you're one of those fortunate ones, and you do need to include that amount of money that you had, that the SBA provided you. That would have been through the SBA, by the way, not through the bank. You would have been going through SBA and applying for the economic injury disaster loan. Then you're going to be putting the number of employees. The other question it asks you is if you have payroll costs, what are, if that's part of this, rent, mortgage, interest, utilities. Someone just asked me the question about what are the other covered costs that are included in here. But only payroll is what you're putting in there. You're going to be putting rent, mortgage, interest, utilities, other covered expenses. For instance, now you could include PPE. You can include even accounts payable in the formula, that as long as it's related to purchases in your business. The covering is only up to 40%. So if I was given, say, $100,000 in PPP money, and I put in for my payroll of $100,000, when I submit my forgiveness, I could just show them $60,000 worth of payroll, and the other $40,000 used for the other expenses, rent, mortgage, interest, utilities. So if I was paying, say, for the 2.5 months, where that money really is only for 2.5 months, whatever my rent would have been for those 2.5 months, I could include it. Now, most people say, geez, for that 2.5 months, I could prove my payroll. Fine. 100% of that money, you're going to prove $100,000 in payroll. But if you think that you want to lessen that burden of proving all the payroll money, and you wanted to just prove 60% of payroll and 40% of those other expenses, you can go right ahead and do it. Now, if you could only just justify 50%, guess what, of payroll, then what's going to happen is they're going to prorate the forgiveness. That means you're going to owe money because you have to come up with 60% payroll, not 50%, not 40%, 60%. I can say it in other languages, 60%. You can't come up with 50%. If you do, then what's going to happen when the lender does their calculation, they're going to prorate that difference, and you're going to then be having a loan for 5 years at 1%, whatever that balance is. So just be aware the minimum that you have to show in payroll is 60% of whatever that number was that you got. And the rest of it could be in those miscellaneous items. If you need more information as to what exactly is included in this, I could provide that to Ann, and then she could circulate that to the audience that's on here as to what exactly are the items that they can include as the other operating expenses. Next slide.
Technology's fabulous when it works. Hold on. Was that the one? No.
Nope, keep going. Yep, okay. Oh, too far. Go back a few. Where the first application was at. Okay, the next slide.
All right, let's see if we can get that going.
Okay, all right. Now, just briefly in talking about the second draw, and I know that the focus is for those first-time applications, but there is the opportunity that if you do use the first draw money and you are able to expend it within that 8 to 24 week period, you can then go in and borrow under the second draw. So if Julio's Bakery got $2,500 under the first draw, and I used it within that 8 week period, I could immediately go into the lender and say, I used my money. I want to now move into the second draw. The lender will then begin to process your application to get you another $2,500 under the second draw. The difference between the first and the second, and if you just, okay, the difference between the first is that you have to have a minimum of 300 employees. And as I said before, you have to have suffered a 25% reduction in revenue. And the maximum, in case someone in this audience has that size of employee base, is 2 million. Unlike in the first, which was 10 million, it was really brought down to 2 million because the Congress really wanted to serve those small businesses rather than the larger businesses that were able to get money under the original act back between April and June. August. Now, the new program, 300, you got to prove 25% reduction, and the maximum in payroll cost is $2 million. And you still got to do the comparison, either do the year-to-year, year-over-year comparison, or a quarter over the quarter, same 2 quarters, you could use that information to qualify. The other thing is for new business, this thing with first draw, there is a stipulation. Your business had to be in business prior to February 15, 2020. If I open my business on March 1st, 2020, guess what? Congress did not allow for any business established after February 15, 2020 to borrow under the PPP program. So bottom line, if I opened up and I've already gotten calls and we can't do anything, it's written into law.
The one thing to remember, folks, is that this loan program, as it is written right now, sunsets on March 31st, 2021. So if you have not done your first draw loan, it is unlikely that you're going to have an opportunity to do a second draw before unless Congress extends this program. So keep that in mind. You have, it's, the sunset is March 31st.
Right. The lender, there's nothing that prohibits a lender to go into their system and get an approval. They don't disperse the money. They can get an approval. And then when you use the money, they will provide you with the second tranche. So again, talk to your lender. You know, if you're a first drawer, if I've never borrowed money, go to them, not only talk to them about the first draw, but what do they require for you to apply for the second draw once, or, you know, when can I apply? So they could tell you, well, once your 8 weeks or your 10 weeks are up, and you use the money, or, you know, 1 week or 2 weeks before, you could come in and apply. Talk to them to make sure that, you know, you can go in on time to get at least the approval in place by SBA, so you could have that money available under the second draw. Next slide.
Keep going.
The second draw, these are the eligibilities. Again, I just mentioned that 300 employees, 25% reduction comparison year over year. Talk to your partners if you're really not sure as to how to do that. For the second draw, the application is different. Unlike the first draw, the application specific for first draw applicants, it has no SD on it. The SD stands for second draw. So it's 2483 SD. The other one's 2483 with no SD on it. And it's the same information you're going to be filling out, except that it asks you about the 3.5 times. So unlike in the first one that only just the multiplier is 2.5 times, here the multiplier is 3.5 times if you're in the service industry, restaurant, motel, hotel, accommodation, that type of industry. You have the ability then to use the multiplier of 3.5 times in that application. So just be aware and talk to us. If you really need assistance, we will guide you through any questions you have. That's what we're here for, to really make sure that you understand the whole process. Now, one of the things also for the updates, and people were really concerned about, do I report this as income? Is it grant? How does, and one of the issues is that SBA is SBA. We're not the IRS. So we don't do rules based on what IRS does their own rules. They are the ones that are the gatekeepers for how people pay taxes, and their regulations are fixed, and people have to abide by them when they do their tax returns. Technically, any grant, federal or state, under normal circumstances is considered income, is grant income. So if I got a $5,000 grant and I show that to my CPA, guess what? He's going to say, that goes in as income. That's how the IRS always functions on these cases. However, Congress, fearing that, wait a minute, we're trying to help all these small businesses and giving them money to help them survive. Now, Mr. IRS, you're telling us that these same businesses have to now declare this money as income. So there was a battle going on for a couple of months, and then in the December 27 legislation, there was teeth put into the act that stipulates that the grants that are being provided under the CARES Act is not to be considered income, which basically means it's grant without ever, it's like money came in, you don't have to report it. But here's where you do report it, because there was another flip to the coin. The IRS was saying, not only do you don't record it as income, you don't record it as an expense. So wait a minute, I got $30,000 in payroll. Now you're telling me I can't expense it. So that's the same thing. I got a $30,000 profit at the bottom. Well, the IRS basically stood with their guns on that. So the legislation that was passed also stipulated that now the small businesses can declare the expense of payroll as an expense, even though that money was granted to them. So you don't declare it now as revenue, but you can now declare it as an expense, which is perfect. That'll help you defray any income. Plus, who knows, it'll probably give you a loss, well, you know, in your tax return, so you don't pay any taxes. But anyway, that's beyond my pay. But just to let you know about tax consequences concerning this. And again, the new form, this, yeah.
So I just want to clarify, and thank you so very much for this information. It's so invaluable. So if I am receiving any types of grants for my business under the CARES Act, as far as the IRS is concerned, then that's not considered income. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. If you got any grant from the PPP program, any CARES Act money, make sure you talk to your CPA, because this is not an SBA question. This is more an IRS issue. And so again, what we've been giving to lenders, because the lenders also wanted to know, because the lenders were the ones responsible for giving out the 1099s, which is how they basically get you with at the end, where you have to report this income, would have been by 1099s issued by the lender. And so what's been happening is that the information that we can provide is the loans and stuff that we're doing through our programs. However, you have state monies, but then the state goes out and says, this is from the CARES Act, $25 million for small business that was just done, and they're referring to this as the CARES Act. Again, contact the state just to make sure, because the state can actually, you know, do things differently than we can. I can't vouch for them, but talk to your CPA just to make sure, your accountant or whoever. But there are, you know, already legislation in place on the CARES Act towards that being considered grant, but just to make sure.
So then if you are going for a second draw and you have received CARES Act funds as grants from the state of Connecticut, in addition to the SBA, and you want to document a 25% reduction in your revenue, then you can back out for PPP, second draw. You can back out all of those monies that was received either through PPP, ERTC, or any money from the state of Connecticut that was designated as CARES Act funds, or the city, and basically not declare those as income. Am I understanding that to be correct?
I could only vouch for the ones from the SBA. That's what I'm trying to make sure, clarify with your accountant or CPA just to make sure. But the monies that you're getting through the PPP program from the first draw, you don't put it in and declare it as income for the second draw. You don't do that. So at least that's been clear. But as far as anything other than the CARES Act, general assumption you would think is, but just run that through your account just to make sure.
Leo, I was just taking a look at the time. It's about 7:10, and there are a lot of questions in the chat, and I want to make sure, I wasn't sure where you were in your presentation, but I wanted to make sure that folks can ask their questions. Are you ready for Q&A, or?
I just wanted to go over one slide on the targeted economic injury disaster loan that's just coming into play. It's one of the slides that are in there, so if you could just move to it.
Let me pop out and get it.
And then next week we'll cover the rest of the paycheck protection, especially the second draw. And I'll bring back information if you really, I'll try to get more additional information on the grants. Since we do reach out to the state DECD, I could ask them if they've been informed by the IRS that any monies that they've provided are not to be included.
Is this the one?
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. We're going to have to pay you a double time for the efforts here. Okay, this is new. This is one of the programs, an exciting program for small business, especially minority businesses and businesses located in low-income communities, Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven. Many of your communities are targeted low to moderate income communities. there are two, this is similar to the advanced program, except it's not the advance. It's just, I don't know, they should have called it something else, but they wound up keeping the word advance in it. But this is to make you whole for the original amount of the advance that you received back whenever it was that you got the money up through June. When you, and this is with SBA directly, it has nothing to do with the banks or anything. Everyone that started in trying to get some assistance at the beginning went to SBA. They didn't go to the banks. The banks came in later, back in April. But before the banks got involved, SBA was lending under this thing called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. That's our traditional loan program for disasters. They were only used for hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, anything that impacted nature in your town. SBA would come in, set up tents, and have this thing called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan available to you. Congress, when they declared the disaster back in March, nationally, all 50 states were declared disasters by the president. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan was used under the auspices that it could be used for the virus, which is amazing. We've never, at SBA, we never used a disaster for this kind of problem. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan was one. When you applied, you were getting the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is a term loan. It's not a grant. So if you applied, you would have been given a loan, 30-year loan for 3.75%. Congress attached to that this thing called an advance. They would have given you a grant up to $10,000 per employee. So if I had 3 employees, I would have $3,000. If I had 10 employees, I would have gotten $10,000. That's the basics of the program. So many people applied. My understanding, over 35 million small businesses applied for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. The money ran out by June. So that program basically shut down, not by Congress, but the money just basically ran out. There are two ways a program can be shut down. Money is expended before the sunset date, or the sunset date comes and the money is not expended and the money goes back to Treasury. In this case, the money ran out. By June, it ran out. The program was not replenished by Congress until December 27th. December 27th comes on in here, and what they did now, they revised the program and they referred it to Targeted Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance. And it's really for those businesses located in low-to-income communities, really to help those smallest of the small that are having problems within the inner cities or the rural communities that are having difficulty, and any money would help them stay afloat. That money is there's only two ways of getting that money right now. You already had an advance, or you applied and you didn't get the advance because the money ran out back in June, July, or whatever. So if you already had an advance, say they gave you $3,000 back in June, just before the program was ended, SBA is going to reach out to you. They're going to send you communication asking you for specific information. And if you're in that community, they will then try to make you whole up to the full amount of the original advance, which was $10,000. So if you already got 3, you might wind up getting the additional 7 as a grant for a total of $10,000. So if you already had an advance, or if you applied and didn't get that money, then stay tuned, because SBA will be reaching out to all of those applicants that were in the system that meet those requirements. And there's specific requirements. You have to be your business, not where you live at, where your business is in the minority community, or let's not say a minority, but the LMI community, low to moderate income community, then you would qualify. But you have to also demonstrate a 30% reduction in revenue over an 8-week period. Unlike, say, the other program, the PPP, where you have to show quarter to quarter, you have to show just your business reduced revenue 30% in an 8-week period. Believe me, pick April, May, and June, you were shut down. So that shouldn't be a difficult task for you to prove. So just be aware, record keeping is very important. Financing, maintaining good records of your books or anything. Talk to your partners now, because if once you get that email letter from SBA, you're going to have to start digging up some of this information. So again, call us or anything if you need assistance. So I just wanted to touch that program, then we'll get into the chit chat.
Beautiful, thank you. Deborah, I know you're on the line. If you see anything in the chat, feel free to jump in. And if anyone has a question that they would like to ask themselves, they can feel free to jump in. Ms. Tanya, you have your hand up. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask? Ms. Tanya? You muted yourself again.
I might have answered
I
it
have my
for
hand
her.
up.
Okay,
Oh, she
thank you.
keeps muting herself.
I'll come back to it. Let me start with some of the questions in chat and get some folks ready. Georgia, you had a question. If you'd like to ask it yourself, please, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Georgia. I'm on the phone as well. I did ask the question about the earned income, the earned tax credit, because that is now made retroactively eligible to businesses, and you can use that in addition to the PPP. And I'm wondering if you can speak to how would those two programs work together. So if I wanted to retroactively go back and claim the earned tax credit for 2020, but I'm also requesting a first draw of PPP for January and February, and if I get the check for that tax credit, do I have to then wait to use use one or the other, so I can't use both at the same time? And I'm not sure if I'm being clear.
Right, I'm not overly familiar with the earned income tax credit. I can get information for the next meeting, but technically you would qualify for the PPP independent of any other sources. Now, there is some caveat within the CARES Act. You can't double dip. When I mean double dip, if the program funds are coming from with the CARES Act, you could only have one and not the other, especially like tax credits for employees, where you could apply for the tax credit for the employees. You can't do that at the same time as get the PPP, because it's providing you the same cash. And so the CARES Act does not provide for that. So I will need to look and see it specific with your question and get back to you.
Okay,
Beautiful.
thank you.
Thank you. Tanya, your mic's open.
Who are you calling?
Miss Tanya. The question was, what was the time period for the first draw?
No, you could apply anytime. It's when the program sunsets is March 31st. So as long as you've been in business prior to February 15, 2020, you qualify. So it doesn't matter what day of the month in June, July, August, and September of 2020, as long as you never borrowed under the program and you could provide 2019 tax returns or payroll for that 2019 year or 2020 year, whichever you need, then you would use those calculations there to get that money.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Tanisha, Tanisha had a question?
Anne-Marie, I have a question regarding the year and the time period of which we're submitting for 2019, but 2020 was a more of a devastating year. So the tax returns are now, they're not due until April. Could a tax return be prepared for 2020 and not be submitted to the IRS and still submit that for the PPP?
You use a draft. As long as you could provide the lender with a draft, that's fine.
Okay.
Just be aware. Just be aware of making sure that the numbers you submitted in the draft is the final numbers, you're going to be providing to the IRS. You don't want to have a problem where you were showing in 20 employees, and then you go to report to the IRS, you only had 3.
No,
So
sir.
yeah, that's what you just want to make sure.
941 and 941s and 940s have been
Yeah.
completed.
Yeah, that's
It's
fine.
now just the tax returns with the expenses for the C Corp. So
Right,
I can do that.
because you need that, right, you need that to prove your 25% reduction. You could either do it by a quarter.
Yes,
So
sir.
if you want to do a quarter of one year versus a quarter of the other year, that's fine. But if you don't do that and you want to use the whole year, then yes, you're going to need the draft of 2020 and the actual of 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry
Or
about
you
that,
can use-
Tanisha. Can you jump in, Tanisha?
Yes. So the first question I had was already answered. So my initial question was, what bank would I have to use to apply for the PPP? Because I'm applying for my 1099 business, but I also have an LLC. And the answer came back that I should apply for the bank that I have my 1099 account with. But the issue, I did a little research while we were on this call. The issue is I'm not eligible to apply at any of my banks. The one for the LLC is not doing PPP. The one for 1099, I have the wrong type of bank account, and my credit union is not participating. So how can I apply for the PPP?
Well, you can, she can use probably a fintech, PayPal, or one of the fintechs. Or you can try,
you could do Bluevine. Yeah, you could go into Bluevine, you could go into PayPal, QuickBooks. They're all set up to do that. They've been approved by SBA and the Treasury to process PPP loans. So if you're because some of the banks will require you to open up a bank account, but if you feel hard pressed and not wanting to do that, then approach a fintech and work it that way, where they don't require any bank relationship, and they're nationwide, so they'll do the loan no matter where, and it's under the same conditions. The forgiveness process will be going through them eventually. The application will be going through them for your loan, and I haven't had between Bluevine and PayPal and QuickBooks, they're the largest in the nation. So
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Diana Byfield, did you have a question? I think
Yes, I did. I
go
did have a question. What if you did apply and you were denied for both, but you end up getting still a grant from the EIDL? Where are you able to apply again?
The IDL loan is a one-time grant. You could apply for an increase under that same loan. So what you would do is, and then Frank, I don't know if you have the 1-800 number for the Answer Center.
Yeah, I
reach
do.
out to the Office of Disaster Center, and just reach out to them, and they'll tell you what forms or what information they're going to need. But it would be an increase under the existing loan you have. It wouldn't be 2 loans all of a sudden, because the way the SBA works is one disaster, one loan. So, but you could apply for an increase up to the maximum right now under the economic injury disaster loan is $150,000.
Okay.
Now,
you can't apply you can't have a PPP and an EIDL though at the same time.
Yeah, you can have. Yeah, you could have the PPP, and they're for different purposes, except one's a grant subject to you providing the forgiveness, and the other one's a permanent loan, 30 years. The first year under the EIDL loan is waived in interest and principal, but it is a 30-year loan.
Okay.
I put the number in the chat.
Thank you.
And Sean, you had a question about seasonal workers? Sean on?
Oh, I hope he didn't leave.
The
I might have
question,
answered his question through the chat.
did you already
Yeah.
answer it? Okay, thank you.
I think I did, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, seasonal businesses are allowed in the program. You just have to provide the seasonality payroll. And
Mhm.
then you do a comparison between one year and the other, or that same season of 2019 versus 2020, so that you can then apply for the second tranche.
Yeah, because he was a landscaper and he wants to hire more people.
Right, right. But the program's not to hire people, it's to keep the ones you already have or hire people to replace the ones you lost. So if I have
Exactly.
right, so if I have
Yeah,
five
you can-
employees, right, but it won't allow you to get more money to hire 5 more. It's really a base program that if I had 5 employees, this is my 941 and it's 30,000, then I'm gonna get $30,000. How I use it to replace, fire, get rid of employees, that's up to the owner. But at the end, he has to end with 5 employees. He could have 10, but the count has to be at a minimum of whatever he started with.
Dana, I had a question. I'm going to ask it if it's okay. Can your business be at a loss and still be eligible?
Unfortunately
No.
not.
All right. And
My
then,
earbud just died. Can you hear me?
yes.
Go ahead,
ahead.
Dana.
Hello?
Go ahead, Dana.
Okay, I was asking a question. What did I say? My business is at a loss from this year. Do I have to show a profit in order to apply?
For the PPP, yes, it's based on the income of the business, not the gross revenue. The gross revenue, the revenue on the top is used to determine that you had a loss in your business. But in order for you to qualify, the multiplier effect of that 2.5 times is your net income. If you had employees, then you're going to use your employees for the money. But if you're self-employed and you had a loss, then no. However, you can go and try to apply for the economic injury disaster loan, since that's a different program through the SBA. You would just go into sba.gov/disaster. And if Frank, if you could put that website, and you could go in there and apply but that's a loan. That's going to be a 30-year loan. But the PPP is specific for payroll or the owner's income.
But that's only if you're showing, only if you, just so I'm correct, only if you're showing a positive number on your Schedule C.
Correct.
For the
So if
PPP.
Right, if line 31 of my Schedule C shows a $4,000 loss, then I'm not in the game. I can't apply. The lender's going to tell you no upfront. The minute you put in the information, they're going to decline you.
Okay, that's what I was told. So the second question that I had was, my accountant had said I wasn't eligible because I was a single person LLC. And I'm wondering if he's tying what you just said to me with the negative reflection, as well as the
Right,
single code.
number of owners has nothing to do with SBA. You could be a single owner LLC or a partnership of 20 people. The rules is it's all driven by the net income of the operations. And the operations of your single owner is your net income, line 31 on your tax return. If it shows a -4, where there's 5 people or 1, that's the number the lender's going to use to calculate the multiplier. And if it comes out negative, then they won't be able to provide you cash.
And I'm sorry, I did have, so you're saying to go the route of the idle loan?
Yeah, the economic injury disaster loan. And see if you could see if you could qualify under there.
Even though I have a negative line 31.
Right, because your business, that's an injury, that's a cash flow injury. And so as long as you're in operation and you're showing revenue and you have operating expenses, they can look into that. And as long as the business is legitimate, they can consider it. I can't tell you that everybody gets through the system, but they can consider doing that because of the disaster nature of that program.
And what was the percentage?
Dana, would you say that your loss was a result of the COVID crisis?
Yes, directly.
Okay, then you should be able to apply.
Correct.
I'm a hair salon, so for most of that time,
Yeah, so you should be able for the idle.
for the idle. And what's the percentage
Right.
for that again?
3.75%. And if I'm
Okay.
correct, because a few people have asked me, they're looking for 2019 revenue information. So they're not looking for 2020. That might help you.
Oh, I had positive for 2019. That's for the
Yeah.
PPP or the idle.
For the PPP, if you never had a loan under the PPP, you could have, you can apply using 2019.
I did receive a small portion from last year, so
Oh,
but I
okay.
just cannot. I just can't do the second draw.
Oh, okay. And then for the idle, you could, when you fill in the information, you can use the 2019 information.
Okay, and that's open and accessible as well.
Yeah.
Right, that's been running.
Beautiful. If you folks don't mind, it's 7:32. If you could give us grace for about 5 more minutes, there's a couple of quick questions in here. And then I wanted to be able to introduce some resources. And Diana Washington is here and on the mic from Southern Connecticut Black Chamber of Commerce, our partner for this event. And Deborah Cavanis, I hope, is with us, and they'll close us out for the
Hi,
evening.
Deborah.
Couple questions. I'm a sole owner and all my employees are independent contractors, 1099s. Can I qualify for PPP?
Just for
Only his
yourself.
income. Only for
Right.
himself. The 1099s, no.
Okay, only for the owner, the 1099s can do it themselves. Good,
Yes,
all
correct.
right. And will we be eligible if we have unpaid taxes to DRS?
To DRS?
Yep, back taxes, unpaid taxes. Are you still eligible to apply for anything?
Anything that, there are questions, if there's any debt owed to Uncle Sam on the form, can have an impact on the application. So there is a question in there, are there, like student debt and stuff like that, or if you've ever, now, if you have a workout, say you do have an agreement and there's a payment plan with them, you can easily continue with the process. But if you're in default and haven't had that might impact you.
All right. And then for EIDL, this last question, how will folks know? Will it be on the website if their business is in a low to moderate income area, or is it just everybody's waiting for the SBA to reach out to them as a business?
Yeah, it's on a call. It's on a call. They're going to be emailing you. Here's the other thing, guys, and I know that, and I'm talking to the audience here. A lot of us open and close accounts because, oh, I didn't need it. Let me go to another bank, or I just relocated, changed my phone number, whatever it is. And that's how small businesses operate. They're, inconsistency is a nature of the beast. When you get these idle loans or any type of loan, they're looking to deposit this money in a specific account. You probably already gave them the information, and all of a sudden now you went to another lender. That could literally put you in the back of the pack. And I'm talking about weeks or months of trying to resolve the issue. If information that you had previous all of a sudden changed, you never notified SBA. Call that 1-800 number that Frank gave you down in the bottom if you've had any changes in anything, because the last thing you want to do is go through all this process. And believe me, I have a lot of businesses that are now stuck in limbo because of the issue of a bank account number was wrong, the information on the business changed, and no one notified SBA. They just put you in the back of the pack. So just be aware of that.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce just a couple of resources, and of course now my dog starts barking. So in case folks need additional help. So the Black Business Alliance, we're on the line. We have technical assistance. If you need us, I put our information in the chat for you. Diana Washington is here. She's going to do her intro in a second. We do have a relationship with BBA Enterprises, which is an accounting firm. And if folks need assistance, Dom's on the line. Dom, can you say just a quick hello from BBA for us? So there she is. She's waving. And if folks need assistance with their back-end accounting to get ready for that application, we're going to be able to help a small number of businesses. So this is going to be first come, first serve. You'll need to email me so that I can get the information, and I will connect you with BBA. All right. And then we're working out a relationship with Key Bank if folks need a place to be able to do those applications. Again, we're working on a relationship with Key Bank. That's why they're partners with us on this particular workshop, and we'll be able to connect you with them as well. Diana and Deborah, I'm gonna let you folks do your thing and then wrap this up for us.
Oh, well, I just wanted to, on behalf of the Southern Connecticut Black Chamber, I wanted to welcome and thank everybody for joining in. I really want to give a wonderful shout out to Julio and Frank for taking the time out to really go in depth, step by step on what the process is. Because especially for first time applicants, a lot of times it's overwhelming. And if you need help, I've posted the chamber's information in the chat. And Dominique, if you could put your information, because I might know of one or two people that could use the CPA. And I just want to say, I hope you'll join us.
Oh, sorry. We're not a CPA firm. We're a bookkeeper firm. So we do all the back office stuff. But I will
Okay.
drop. It's fine. I will drop the company name and everything and the phone number there. So I'll do that now before I log off.
Thank you so much. And
No problem.
I hope you'll join us next week. We'll be doing a second part. We'll be looking into the second PPP, the second drawdown. And hopefully if you still have some lingering questions with the first, we will try to answer those. But we want this to be about you guys, and we want to make sure that all your questions are answered so you go away with a clear mind. And we just thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to Deborah. Is she on?
I haven't seen her.
I know she was trying to get in on the phone.
I'm not seeing her. So with that, we're going to say again, thank you to everybody. Thank you to Julio and Frank Alvarado for doing the presentation for us. Thank you all for coming. Again, you have our information. If you need us, please reach out to us. That's what we're here for, to be able to give you the assistance that you need to apply for these programs and grow your business. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Let me just ask one thing.
Sure.
Tracy, did you get your question answered?
Tracy's on mute.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I did get my question answered.
Oh, okay, because I saw it over there and I didn't know
Yes.
whether, and I didn't want to leave you hanging. That's all.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Thanks again, everybody.
guys. See you next
Have a good
week.
night. Thank you.
See you next Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye now.